Evening. Good to see you tonight. We're back in Bible study. It's been 3 weeks, so good to have you back, and glad to get back into some routine. Kids are probably back in school, so that helps a little bit. Our kids were going a little bit crazy, needing something to do. So, all right, let's go ahead and begin with 237. We'll sing "Tell It to Jesus," number 237. Let's stand if you're able to. Let's stand and sing. 237, we'll sing all 4 verses there. Are you weary? Are you heavy-hearted? Tell it to Jesus. Tell it to Jesus. Are you grieving over joys departed? Tell it to Jesus alone. Tell it to Jesus. Tell it to Jesus. He is a friend that's well known. You've no other such a friend or brother. Tell it to Jesus alone. Do the tears flow down your cheeks unbidden? Tell it to Jesus, tell it to Jesus. Have you sins that to men's eyes are hidden? Tell it to Jesus alone. Tell it to Jesus, tell it to Jesus. He is a friend that's well known. You've no other such a friend or brother. Tell it to Jesus alone. Do you fear the gathering clouds of sorrow? Tell it to Jesus, tell it to Jesus. Are you anxious? What shall be tomorrow? Tell it to Jesus alone. Tell it to Jesus, tell it to Jesus. He is a friend that's well known. You've no other such a friend or brother. Tell it to Jesus alone. Are you troubled at the thought of dying? Tell it to Jesus, tell it to Jesus. For Christ's coming kingdom are you sighing? Tell it to Jesus alone. Tell it to Jesus, tell it to Jesus. He is a friend that's well known. You've no other such a friend or brother. Tell it to Jesus alone. All right, good singing tonight. Jay, would you open and pray for us, please?
Our gracious God and Heavenly Father, thank you for another opportunity to come under the teaching of your word. We thank you for the written word, but also for the living word, the Lord Jesus Christ. And so we praise you for this opportunity. And we ask that we thank you for the teaching gift that Dan has, and for the time that he takes to prepare. And bless him as he presents your word. And we ask that you would bless it to our minds and to our hearts, and that might affect our wills. And this we ask in the name of the Lord Jesus Christ.
Amen. Thank you. You may be seated. Let's sing right across the page, 238, I Must Tell Jesus. Similar song, but some additional thoughts there. Let's go ahead and sing verses 1, 2, and 4. 1, 2, and 4, 238, I Must Tell Jesus. I must tell Jesus all of my trials. I cannot bear these burdens alone. In my distress, He kindly will help me. He ever loves and cares for His own. I must tell Jesus, I must tell Jesus, I cannot bear my burdens alone. I must tell Jesus, I must tell Jesus. Jesus can help me, Jesus alone. I must tell Jesus, Jesus, all of my troubles. He is a kind, compassionate friend. If I but ask him, he will deliver. Make of my troubles quickly an end. I must tell Jesus, I must tell Jesus, I cannot bear my burdens alone. I must tell Jesus, I must tell Jesus, Jesus can help me, Jesus alone. Verse 4. Oh, how the world to evil allures me. Oh, how my heart is tempted to sin. I must tell Jesus, and he will help me. Over the world, the victory to win. I must tell Jesus, I must tell Jesus, I cannot bear these burdens alone. I must tell Jesus, I must tell Jesus, Jesus can help me, Jesus alone. All right, good singing tonight. You can put that aside. And let's take our Bibles to turn to Proverbs. And we're going to pick up a similar theme that we started for a couple of weeks back in December there from the book of Proverbs on God's wisdom for life. But we're going to look at, over the next couple of weeks, various challenges, maybe we could say temptations that we have, and it relates to a variety of topics that Proverbs has. If some of you remember, this was probably about 4 years ago or 5 years ago, I did a complete study of Proverbs consecutively, and we would take maybe 10 verses at a time and just kind of look at how they related to each other, kind of looking at some of the context. But Proverbs has limited context, and so there are a variety of places throughout the book that talk about the same themes. So it's also good to take a thematic approach to Proverbs and collate all of those verses that relate to the same topic. And so that's what we're going to be doing with these couple of weeks, our study of various challenges or temptations that we need God's wisdom to help us with. So first one is tonight we're going to talk about anger. And I think it's very important for us to think carefully about anger because there's a lot of confusion about whether anger is proper or improper. How should we be angry? Should we be angry? Well, let me just give a couple clarifying statements here as we begin. Anger, I think you know, is an emotional response to a negative external situation. Maybe we could call it a stimulus. Something happens to you, and usually we react in anger if it's a negative situation. It is often, though, excused as merely a personality trait, and some will say, well, that's just part of my personality, and we can excuse it that way. And some say, well, it's just a family pattern. So, you know, my dad was angry, so I'm angry, and we just kind of brush it off as being that's just the way we are. Well, anger can be a natural response to injustice. So, you know, something wrong happens, and that could make us angry. I think that could be a proper reaction in some cases, but it should not lead to sin. It should not lead to a sinful attitude or a sinful action or some type of behavior. And so there also then would be a selfish anger. It can often be a selfish response when our expectations are not met. And so we feel like we don't deserve to be treated this way, or we don't deserve for these things to happen. My teens sometimes say it this way, it's not fair. And they use that for all sorts of contexts that don't really make sense to say it's not fair. But, you know, we think that this shouldn't have happened to me, and we get angry about it. Anger can provide energy for positive change. And Paul talks about this in 2 Corinthians, where he says that the Corinthians used vehement desire and anger, proper anger, to motivate them to proper action. But it can also bypass careful thought and indulge the flesh. So we just react instead of carefully acting in a profitable way. Anger easily produces harsh words, a vengeful spirit, and violent actions. And in those cases, many times, most of the time, it's going to be sinful. So we must force ourselves to assess our anger objectively. And by the way, when we're angry, it's very hard to do that, isn't it? So we have to wait until maybe we've calmed down and then assess the anger that we've had and ask, is that right? With biblical criteria, because it's easy to use personal opinion to justify how we've reacted, and that's usually going to be biased. It's not going to be accurate. So anger must only be channeled toward righteous, right purposes that are defined by God. Well, Proverbs, as I think you will see, has more to say about anger than any other book in the Bible. And so we're going to stick with Proverbs tonight. We could look all through Scripture, and it'd probably take more time than we have tonight. But we're going to look in Proverbs and kind of keep our focus there tonight. And so in doing so, I want us to remember this main truth, because anger is dangerous. Okay? And I chose that word carefully. It's not always wrong, but often it is wrong. And so therefore I say anger is dangerous. It has a lot of dangerous results, consequences, possibilities. So because anger is dangerous, we must exercise wisdom with anger. And that's what we are looking to Proverbs to help us with, because Proverbs is the book of wisdom. So because anger is dangerous, we must exercise wisdom with our anger. So how does the wisdom of Proverbs guide us in relationship to anger? Well, Proverbs provides 4 lessons that we're going to look at tonight, so you can write these down. Number 1, it provides the definition of anger. The definition of anger. Secondly, we're going to see that it also gives us the description of anger. The description of anger. And then number 3, we're going to see that it provides the development of anger, helps us to understand how anger grows and develops. And then lastly, number 4, we're going to find the diffusing of anger. And if you think of a firecracker or a stick of dynamite that has a fuse, well, if you let that fuse continue to burn, it's going to explode. It's going to blow up. So we want to defuse that so that it does not explode. So the diffusing of anger. Well, let's begin with prayer tonight as we look at these 4 lessons of wisdom from Proverbs on the area of anger. Father, help us tonight as we look into your word. Help us to apply some truth to the way that we live, the way that we think and act, especially with our emotions and our use of anger. Lord, it's easy for us to be angry about a variety of things that we don't like, but help us only to allow anger for right purposes and to always stay under control. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen. Okay, we're going to look at a variety of passages, so you may not necessarily be able to turn to all of them as quickly. I have mine printed out, so that's okay. But you can obviously turn there and go back and look at them on your own time. Well, let's begin by looking at, number 1, the definition of anger. And whenever I want to define a word, I like to look at dictionaries, but not just English dictionaries. I also like to look at Hebrew and Greek dictionaries, because it just kind of fleshes out my understanding of the ancient languages. Old Testament would be Hebrew, New Testament would be Greek, and try to see what their words meant. And I love Hebrew when it comes to definitions because it's a very picturesque language. So try this on for size. Letter A, notice with me, first of all, the statements, that's your blank for letter A, the statements of the definitions of anger. And so there's a couple of words that we can find in Proverbs and other places in the Scriptures, specifically the Old Testament, for anger. And so we're going to define some of these. Number 1 is wrath. Wrath means heat, hot, rage, displeasure, indignation, and even, kind of uniquely, poison. I think that's fascinating because we do see that sometimes anger can poison our heart, poison our relationships. And so it has a variety of ways that it is applied in different contexts. But I think if we remember that it does make us hot, Maybe if the blood pressure rises and we almost start to feel the redness coming on our face, hot behind the neck. So that's a very accurate way of describing anger. And wrath, of course, has the idea of anger that is deep-seated. And so we'll see that a little further down. Anger. The word anger is a different word, and it means to snort through the nose or to flare out the nostrils. And so just picture that with me. That's maybe like a raging bull who's pawing the ground. He's about to charge. And you can think about the snorting of a bull if you want to think about the Hebrew description of anger. And sometimes people act that way too because they lose control and they're just snorting out of anger or flaring out the nostrils. Well, hatred is another term, and it's often a quieter anger, maybe a resentment that develops into outright hatred. And this usually refers to internal repugnance. In other words, it's on the inside, but we are just despising someone. So it may not be as obvious, but also it can be used to refer to an enemy, someone that we treat as an enemy because we hate them or we despise them. So often the word hate refers to enemies. Okay, so there's some definitions. Let's talk about letter B, the significance. So what can we learn from these definitions? I think that we can see there, number one, anger can be both internal and it can be external. And depending on your personality, maybe you're more the type person who likes to stuff everything inside and it just is in there kind of seething until, something small happens and you just explode. Or maybe you have a lot of self-control and you just nurse resentment, you nurse the grudge for years and hardly anybody knows about it, but it's still in there, it's still festering. So there's resentment, but there's also, of course, external anger. It could be an outburst. The New Testament word clamor kind of indicates this, and it's noisy outbursts. We think of maybe a child having a tantrum, but adults can have tantrums too. And sometimes they throw things, sometimes they yell and scream, and that can be an external outburst of anger. Okay, what's another way of describing it? Anger can be quick or slow to develop. So some people are quick to get mad. It doesn't take much. They have a short fuse, and they just explode without really much happening. Or it could be something that kind of builds over time. And so as I studied Proverbs recently, you could kind of describe it either with the explosion type of anger, like a stick of dynamite, or you could describe it maybe as like the tea kettle. And it's just sitting there. It doesn't really show any signs of heat for a while, but then after a little while, you start to hear maybe some bubbling and some hissing, and it starts to show. So there's different ways that anger can develop, different ways that it can be expressed, that it can be shown. And here's a thought question for you to think about. To what kind of anger are you most prone? Because I think if we're going to evaluate ourselves objectively, we got to start with, how do I typically show anger? Is it internal? Is it external? Is it quick to develop? Is it slow to develop? But then we're going to go deeper and try to understand, why do we get angry? So let's take a look secondly at the description of anger. Number 2, the description of anger. And we're going to look at some Proverbs now, not just definitions. But notice that first, letter A, we're going to see the signs. Some signs that will indicate to us that anger is building, that anger is showing. First of all, let's look at Proverbs 12:16. It says, a fool's wrath is presently known. In other words, his wrath is going to show. And it's one of those things where if we can't hide our anger and we can't control our anger, that's an indication that we're being foolish. We have no self-control. We have no ability to keep that under control. So a fool's wrath is presently known. He can't hide it. It just comes out. But a prudent man covereth shame. A wise man is able to overlook shame. Someone does something shameful, and we don't have to get angry at them right away. We can overlook it, and we can forgive, and we can act, hey, it's not a big deal. We'll let it go. So First of all, a fool's wrath is presently known. So wrath, anger, can easily be displayed on the outside, especially with a foolish person. Secondly, notice pride is often the cause of strife and wrath. And I think we can see here that this is very much a selfish kind of anger, because somebody did something to me, or they didn't do something that I think they should have done, and I resent that. My expectations have not been met. So look at chapter 13, verse 10. Only by pride cometh contention. Contention is the idea of arguing, bickering, demanding our rights, but with the well-advised is wisdom. So if we are listening to good advice, we're going to have wisdom rather than just blowing a gasket, just getting angry and allowing our pride to make us or cause us to demand our rights. Now look at chapter 21, verse 24. Proud and haughty scorner is his name, who dealeth in proud wrath. Notice the repetition of the word proud here. Proud and haughty, and then proud, to really emphasize the connection between pride and wrath. So I think we really have to be honest with ourselves and objective and ask, am I angry because of a self-centered, prideful reason that is causing me to feel like I'm not being treated the way I think I should be treated? Let me remind myself as well, we don't deserve anything good. We deserve God's judgment. And so it is of the Lord's mercies that we are not consumed. And so we don't deserve anything good. We deserve God's judgment, but His grace, His mercy has been given to us. That means we should be willing to extend His grace and mercy to others also. Okay, notice then number 3, anger motivated by envy is worse than others. Look at chapter 27 and verse 4. Wrath is cruel. Okay, that's one kind of anger. Wrath is cruel. It can cause you to do really brutal type things. Anger is outrageous. That's the idea of just kind of losing it. But who is able to stand before envy? Envy is that deep-seated resentment because we feel like someone got something we deserved to get and we didn't get it, and so we resent them, we're jealous, we're envious of them, and he says that is the most dangerous kind. Maybe you could even think of a jealous husband or a jealous wife and causing that person to be even more outlandish in their expression of anger because of their envy. So that should cause us to be aware of these sources of or these motivations for anger. Now let's talk about the seriousness of anger. So letter B is the seriousness of anger. Like I mentioned in the beginning, there are a lot of ways that we tend to downplay or excuse or act like our anger is not a big deal. But anger is dangerous, and I want you to see here that it is destructive, and many times, most of the time I should say, it's foolish and it's sinful. So look at chapter 14, verse 29. It says here, he that is soon angry dealeth foolishly, and a man of wicked devices is hated. So the point here is that anger usually causes us to deal foolishly, to make bad decisions, because we're not thinking clearly. In fact, those who study the brain would suggest to us that, in fact, what happens is our brain kind of gets flooded with blood, and then it's like we can't think clearly. So there's actually, you could even say, physical reasons why this is the case. And a man of wicked devices is hated. So it causes us to do wicked devices, and so it's kind of like it goes in one direction, but then it comes back on us from the opposite direction. So doing things that are motivated by anger causes us to deal foolishly, but then, because we've dealt foolishly, someone else, the recipient of that foolish behavior, hates us in return because of the wicked things that we've done, and they will treat us in the same way. So notice here, wrath leads to hastiness, which promotes folly. I think I missed the right verse there. He that is slow to wrath is of great understanding, but he that is hasty of spirit exalteth folly. Okay, so slow to wrath, that's one who has great understanding, but he that is hasty of spirit exalteth folly. So if we are just quick to make snap decisions, that's one of the ways that we act out in anger, and we actually start doing things that are foolish. Okay, chapter 29, verse 22. Notice with me that a furious man abounds in transgression. And that's a reference to sin. An angry man stirreth up strife, and a furious man aboundeth in transgression. So when we are angry, we're going to cause more anger. We're going to stir up arguments. And we're going to see in a moment that instead of responding with anger, which stirs up strife, we should instead respond with gentle words. Notice, a furious man aboundeth in transgression. So someone who's just always getting angry, always reacting in anger, always speaking in anger, they're going to be sinning a lot. They're going to be doing a lot of things that are not right. So that's why I think we need to be really, really careful about the anger that we may express, because many times it's going to be expressed in sinful ways. All right, then let's notice number 3. A fool's wrath is harder to bear than a large stone or much sand. He says a stone is heavy and the sand weighty, but a fool's wrath is heavier than them both. In other words, you want to leave it behind. You don't want to deal with this kind of person, because not only are they angry, but they're a foolish person who is angry, and it's just unbearable. You just want to be as far away from that person as possible. And so, if you are not in control of your anger, that's one way of expressing or indicating foolishness, and that's a person that is not going to have good influence on the people around them. They're going to ruin their reputation. All right, and then notice number 4, chapter 21, verse 17. He that loveth pleasure, is it the right verse? I think that's the wrong verse. Excuse me there. It is the verse that talks about the angry or contentious woman, and that she is insufferable. It's harder to dwell in the corner, in a White House with a contentious woman than in a corner of the house with someone who is not that way. So I'll find that reference for you. But what was it? Oh, okay. Yes, thank you. Yes, so you can correct that on your page. Thank you. So that, again, emphasizes, and I think it's not only applicable to women, but I think that sometimes a woman does not have the physical ability to make things, or the authority always to make things the way she wants it, so she tends to be more contentious, argumentative in her way of trying to get things to be the way she wants them to be. So just be careful of that. I think that's a good warning to us, that that's a person who you don't want to be around. You would, in a sense, try to be as far away from that as possible. Yep, there it is. It is better to dwell in the wilderness than with a contentious and angry woman. So don't be that person. Okay, so that's the seriousness of anger. Here's a question for us to think about. What is the usual cause of your anger? I think we have to start thinking carefully, what is it that causes me to be angry? And start maybe cataloging some of those stimuluses, or maybe we could say some of those temptations that come along. And I don't use the word trigger. I know that secular psychology likes to use the word trigger because it shifts the blame to the person who made me angry. And I don't use that, because nobody forced you to get angry. Yes, they can do things that definitely tempt you to get angry, but each of us is the one who has control over our own reactions. And if we don't, then that's something that we have to work on. Okay, let's take a look at number 3, the development of anger. The development of anger. Letter A, notice first the spread. Letter A is the spread. Okay, chapter 14, verse 17, it says, he that is soon angry dealeth foolishly. And this is the verse I quoted earlier. And a man of wicked devices is hated. So, we don't want to be soon angry, because if we are soon angry, it's going to lead to foolish actions and wicked plans that causes us to be hated by others whom we have wronged or hurt. And I think you can probably imagine plenty of people who have come up with foolish actions and wicked plans to get back at people who they are angry with, And that has been prompted by getting angry quickly. So hasty anger is very dangerous. All right, notice also chapter 25 and verse 8. Go not forth hastily to strive. In other words, to argue and to confront without knowing the facts, lest thou know not what to do in the end thereof when thy neighbor hath put thee to shame. So you think that you're going to go and yell and scream at this person, but you haven't really learned all of the facts, and now when they're able to show you that you're wrong, you're going to be put to shame. You're going to feel foolish and be embarrassed. So hasty arguments lead to embarrassment and shame. That's why we need to calm down, think carefully, choose our words carefully, and then talk with that person in such a way that we avoid needlessly causing strife. All right, and then chapter 15, verse 1, one of the most famous verses in Proverbs about this. A soft answer turneth away wrath, but grievous words stir up anger. So the contrast here, obviously, is in the way that we speak. If we have a soft answer, a gentle approach, notice that it's going to turn away the wrath of someone else who has confronted us or is angry with us, and we stay calm instead of defending ourselves and accusing them in return. Notice the opposite, though, is true also. Grievous words, words that cause grief, stir up anger. So how we speak can have a great effect on how the other person responds back to us. So offensive words stir up more anger. And then number 4, a man of wrath stirs up strife. So kind of building off what we saw there, look at verse 18. A wrathful man stirreth up strife, but he that is slow to anger appeaseth strife. So there's 2 ways that we can help the situation or make the situation worse. If we are responding with anger in turn, we make it worse. But if we have slow to anger, then we're going to calm the strife down, not escalate the strife. Look at chapter 29, verse 22. An angry man stirreth up strife, and a furious man aboundeth in transgression. So we've seen that already, and that's a reminder once again that anger stirs up strife. Okay, let's move on then to letter B. Notice with me here not just the spread, but also the snare. Anger creates a trap, and it causes us to be stuck in a destructive pattern. Notice first, number 1, an angry man will influence his friends to be like him. And sometimes it's a father influencing his son, or influencing his daughter, or influencing others around him, or someone else. And so that's why it's dangerous for us to just react in anger. We will have a very negative effect on others. And that means we also need to guard the associations that we have so that they don't begin to have an effect on us. He says, make no friendship with an angry man, and with a furious man thou shalt not go, lest thou learn his ways and get a snare to thy soul. So it makes it very clear that having an angry disposition is a snare. It's a trap. It's a dangerous way of thinking and living. And so not only should we not have that, but we should not be around other people who do have that, because it will have a negative effect on us. And then notice then, number 2, hatred ruins a sumptuous meal. Chapter 15, verse 17, better is a dinner of herbs where love is, in other words, eating just mere vegetables or something very plain, than a stalled ox like veal, something that is fattened up nicely and is wonderfully cooked and tasting very good, and hatred therewith. So hatred, anger. Have you ever been at a family gathering? Maybe it's a Thanksgiving dinner or a Christmas dinner, and somebody started an argument, and it just went from bad to worse, and it just ruined the atmosphere of the entire gathering, of the entire party, and you just wanted to be as far away from there as possible. So the emphasis here is don't act that way. You can ruin a situation by having hatred, by having an angry disposition. Okay, let's move along then. Notice with me, number 3, a man of great wrath will suffer punishment repeatedly. Verse 19, a man of great wrath will suffer punishment, for if thou deliver him, yet thou must do it again. And so this shows that this can be almost I hesitate to use the word addictive, because sometimes people use that to refer to something that they can't change or they make excuses for. But it's more the idea of it's a pattern of behavior that someone just continues and it becomes a bad habit. It's an easy thing to keep doing because they're used to doing it, and it has to be altered. And it's not easy to change bad habits, but it is possible. Sometimes I use the illustration of, going down a path in a forest. And the more times you go down the path, the easier it is to go down that path, because you've trampled down the briars and the grass and made a path that's easy and smooth. But if you're going to go down a different path that is not cleared, you're going to have to force your way through some vines and some grass and some briars. And that's kind of like the patterns or the paths of the mind. And so if your pattern of behavior is always going down an angry path, it's going to be easy to go right back to that. But if instead you need to have a calm, self-controlled, spirit-controlled path, you may have to forge a new path by the grace of God, asking Him for help to make the right choice and abandon the easy path and forge a new path that establishes a new pattern of behavior. And that's by the grace of God, the filling of the Holy Spirit, who enables us to do that. All right, let's notice then number 4, acting with proud wrath invites the reputation of a scorner. And we saw this earlier, but notice this affects your reputation. Proud and haughty scorner is his name. So now everybody knows you as the proud and haughty scorner. You're arguing with everyone. You're always trying to say that you're right. Maybe we would use in modern terms a narcissist, okay, who dealeth in proud wrath. So what's the solution for that kind of person? Well, they need to be humbled. And so it's either going to be they decide that they will be humbled, or God may have to forcibly humble them. And that's not a position you want to be in. So don't let yourself become that proud and haughty scorner who deals in proud wrath. Okay, here's a question for us to consider. What are some negative effects of anger that you have observed? Maybe it's in your own actions, in the actions of others, maybe in the way that you were brought up, maybe in the workplace, maybe in the home. I want us to think through the way that anger affects others, the results, the consequences. All right, finally, let's notice together the diffusing of anger. And this is, I think, where we really want to stop and think carefully. How do we counteract the temptation, the tendency to just respond in anger? Well, letter A, we got to start with the Scriptures and see what it tells us. So letter A is the Scriptures. Number 1, first, let's notice that a wise response is to cover shame. We've seen this already, but look at chapter 12, verse number 16 once again. A fool's wrath is presently known. He can't control it. He can't hide it. He can't calm himself down. It just comes out. But a prudent man, a wise man, can cover shame. He can say, you know what, that was shameful. That was offensive. That was irritating. But I'm going to overlook that. I'm going to get past it. And that's the first thing I think we can do. If it's a minor thing, especially if it's a foolish thing someone does. You know, I was driving down Grayson Road here the other day, and that intersection just before you get to Don's Performance, somebody pulled out in front of me. And, you know, you have a decision to make in that moment. Am I going to overlook this, or am I going to let him have it? Not ram him, but, you know, honk at him. And so the temptation is to just express that anger. And I would caution us, you know, it's okay to overlook, unless it's a dangerous thing and you're trying to warn them, hey, watch out, be careful. But, you know the difference between a warning honk and an angry honk. I think you could probably figure that out. All right, so overlook, cover shame. Number 2, be slow to anger. Chapter 14, verse 29, he that is slow to wrath is of great understanding. And so that means that we're thinking carefully through, should I be angry about this? Am I right to be angry about this? And that means we're going to slow down our reaction time, okay? But then notice, but he that is hasty of spirit exalteth folly. So if we just blow up and we're hasty to get angry, that encourages foolish choices and foolish behaviors. All right? And then also, chapter 16 and verse 32. He that is slow to anger is better than the mighty. You know, guys especially, we want to be strong and macho and tough. But you know what's better than being strong? Being slow to anger. That shows real strength. That shows strength of character. That's the kind of strength that we ought to have. And he that ruleth his spirit, he has control over his reactions, over his attitudes, over his feelings, his emotions. That's better than he that taketh a city. Because if you conquer the city, but you can't control your emotions, how are you going to be able to run the city? How are you going to be able to control the city? It's not going to last. So better to have rule over your spirit than to take a city and be able to have rule over a city. Okay, number 3. So be slow to anger. Number 3, overlook an offense. Overlook an offense, especially if it's minor. Proverbs 19:11, the discretion of a man. So his wisdom deferreth his anger. He's able to pass the anger. He's able to move it off to the side, move it to the future. And it is his glory. He's going to be honored. And notice, I think also, he is happy to pass over a transgression. It makes him feel good. You know what? I did the right thing. I didn't blow up. I didn't get angry. And he's going to be honored for the fact that he has been willing to do that. Others will appreciate that, and they will respect him for that. Chapter 10, verse 12, hatred stirreth up strifes, but love covereth all sins. And I think that really refers to all kinds of sins. And so we're able to forgive. We're able to overlook. We're able to say, you know what? Yeah, that was rough, but I'm going to forgive because of love and be able to move forward. Okay, let's continue on then. Number 4, stay calm and use gentle words. And it's not going to be easy to change this overnight. You probably wouldn't know this, but I had a bad temper when I was in high school and junior high. My mom and my brother used to pick me up because I would just lose it, and they would toss me outside and cool me off for a while. Maybe it's because I have some red in my beard, right? I'll just blame it on that. But it took me a long time. It really wasn't until my senior year of college when I remembered, and I'm not saying I haven't lost my temper since then, but that was when I finally stopped making excuses and recognized that this had to stop as a pattern of behavior. So I would encourage you, yes, there is hope. You can change, but it's going to take patience. It's going to take prayer. It's going to take work. So stay calm. Use gentle words. Chapter 15, verse number 1, a soft answer turneth away wrath, but grievous words stir up anger. And that's a choice. Maybe you need to, before you talk to that person, go out, find a quiet place, write down what you're going to say carefully, calmly, and then go read the script, okay? If you can't control and use a soft answer, then write down a soft answer and stick to the script, all right? Okay, number 5, look for ways to pacify anger. Help the other person to calm down. How can we do this? Here's a couple ideas. Chapter 15, verse 18, a wrathful man stirreth up strife, but he that is slow to anger appeaseth strife. So that's one of the ways that we can de-escalate, is if we stay calm. All right? Pretty simple. Stay calm. And that actually makes you feel good because you know that you're doing the right thing even if the other person is doing the wrong thing. And that helps you to stay calm. Chapter 16, verse 14, the wrath of a king, which could be dangerous, is as messengers of death, but a wise man will pacify it. That reminds me of Daniel. Remember when, I think it's chapter 2, if I remember right, Nebuchadnezzar said, all of the wise men, they're going to be killed because they're all worthless. They can't interpret my dream. And when Daniel heard about it, he's like, wait, let me go talk to him. And he calms Nebuchadnezzar down, and he answers his question, and he's able to help. So, it's dangerous if a king is upset, but a wise man looks for a way to pacify it. Like that baby, you put the pacifier in. So look for ways to pacify it. Here's one option. Chapter 21, verse 14, a gift in secret pacifieth anger. Now, we have to make sure this is done with sincerity, that we're not just trying to bribe someone or think that we can give them a gift to get them to stop, being angry at us. But we have to couple this with sincerity and humility and maybe an apology, and this can help. All right, and a reward in the bosom, strong wrath. So giving a reward, giving a gift can help to show that, hey, we're really sorry for what we did. All right, so that's one way. And then also, number 6, avoid spending prolonged time with an angry man, because that's going to encourage you to be an angry man. It's going to make you feel justified in being an angry man because we are spending time around the people who do the things we do, and that makes us feel like it's okay. All right, now let's quickly look at the summary. Letter B. Letter B is the summary. And so this is just kind of going back through everything we've heard and just kind of putting it together. Number 1, wisdom recognizes pride as the instigator of selfish anger. So we got to start with the root, which is pride, and confess the pride, and then we will have the humility that helps us to stay calm because we realize we didn't deserve something better than what we experienced. Number 2, wisdom chooses to overlook offense with discretion and love. Number 3, wisdom calculates the shame, folly, and harm of hasty anger, causing us to slow down, calm down. Number 4, wisdom chooses to forgive, promoting peace and unity. Number 5, wisdom uses a